get a lot of emails with questions about project settings. There are so many options, especially for those who may be new to video. They can be a little overwhelming and confusing. So let's try and address some of the main questions that I'm getting and also cover some of the new settings of 6.5 as we go. Let's start up a new project and go through the steps that people would normally have to take when they start a new project in Edius. Now, I believe the first time that you run Edius on a new computer, you are given the prompt to create a profile for yourself. And so if you don't see a profile for yourself here, you should probably create one. And you can do that once you open up a project. There'll be a place there where you can add your own profile. But for now, let's click on New Project and create a new project with new settings. First thing you want to do is give yourself a project name, and for the purposes of this tutorial, I think I'm just going to call this temp project. The next option, you're asked to tell Edius where you would like to save your project. And if you click this little button over here, you are taken to your Windows directory and given the option of migrating to all of the hard drives that are currently connected to your computer. And there are a couple of principles to keep in mind when deciding where you would like to save your new project. First of all, if you do have other drives connected to your computer, it is better to save your project to a hard drive that is something other than your system drive. And so if you have a couple of hard drives connected to your computer, choose one that is different than your C drive or your system drive. Another thing to keep in mind is that it is best if the hard drive that you choose has a fast connection, that either it's a RAID drive, RAID array, or maybe a USB 3 or one of these fast FireWire drives, something that's a little faster than your normal connection. You also want to have a hard drive that does physically spin faster than some that are available. You can get hard drives that are 5,400 rotations per second, I believe it is. You want to look for the ones that are 7,200. So if you do have a variety of drives that are connected to your computer, make sure it is a fast drive, a fast connection. Another thing to keep in mind is that you should try and choose a drive that has lots of space. Let's maybe open up our Windows Explorer here. We see that one of our drives here is almost getting full. When you see a drive like this that's turned red, you'll know that you probably shouldn't add too many more files to that. In fact, I should probably go into this one and look for files that I could delete so that I can continue using this hard drive in the project that I'm currently working on. And really, as I look here, there's no real good drive connected to my computer at the moment to start a brand new project, especially if it's a large project. So if I was seriously starting a brand new project here where I was going to be collecting a lot of files and data to it, I would probably want to start with a brand new hard drive. And it's also good if you can choose a hard drive, if you're working on a laptop or even a desktop computer, if you have a USB 3 connection, it's a good idea, I believe. My philosophy has changed over the years on this. It's a good idea to make a specific project go to a dedicated hard drive where perhaps that external hard drive is only for the purposes of that particular new project that you're working on. I know I have criticized Edius or Grass Valley in past articles or perhaps some tutorials for forcing people to collect everything for a particular project onto a specific drive. I argued that that was probably the best for event photographers, like a wedding, where you want to keep everything together, but may not be the best for documentary filmmakers or news cutters, where you're calling on stock footage from the past 4 or 5 years that may be spread out over a number of hard drives, It just didn't make sense to me to try and force people to bring everything to a one drive for a project. But slowly I am changing my mind on that and becoming more and more convinced that that is a good idea. The people at Grass Valley were right all along. This is the better approach. So if you're starting a new project or a group of projects that may be similar, like maybe all your family videos, it's best just to go down to Best Buy, get a USB 3 hard drive, hook it up to your computer, hopefully that has a USB 3 connection, and make that drive specific to your new project. And then bring all of your material to that project folder, whether it be new material that you've shot for the project or collecting stock footage from a number of different hard drives. Bring all of that material onto your new project drive. So those are the main principles to keep in mind when deciding what folder or where your folder should be. For the purposes of this tutorial, I think I'll just put it in Worldview Images. And it's good to keep the next little box checked, create a folder with the project name, so that as Edius sets up this project, it will create a folder automatically on the drive that I have selected. All right, moving on. Presets. The presets that show up here, I believe, if I remember correctly, these presets were set up by Edius based on the questions that you answered the first time that you ran Edius. Depending on the boxes that you checked on a little dialog box there, these are the presets that Edius presents to you when you go to start a project. For example, if you said that you are living in PAL land, most of your presets or all of your presets will reflect this PAL settings rather than NTSC, what I have here. However, the thing to keep in mind here is that inevitably the presets that Edius provides for you automatically because of this questionnaire are almost certainly not the settings that are going to be optimal for your project, and you're going to have to go down to customize anyway. And the thing to keep in mind is as you customize the settings for your particular project, Edius will not remember those customizations and save those automatically to your presets. And so the next time you start a project, if you are creating a project with unique settings for your purposes, you're going to have to change those every time using the Customize box until you make your own presets. And we'll show you how to do that in a little bit. How you can make specific presets that are totally targeting the types of projects that you are running. So for now, let's just start with a project that is close to what we want, and hit the Customize checkbox and hit OK. And here in this dialog box, we can go in and fine-tune the settings for the particular project that we want to start. Okay, our first option, video preset. What video preset from this big drop-down list should we choose for our project? And people email me and ask me, do I choose a setting based on the types of footage that was shot for the project? Do I set it up for what the camera shot? Or should I choose a setting that is going to be my final output and bring all of my camera footage into a project that has settings for what I intend to export to? And what if the footage that I'm bringing in is coming from all over the place and may be shot at different settings? Some of it might be HDV footage, some of it might be HD in a NTSC flavor, some of it might be PAL footage. You might be buying stock that may have been shot at 60p. There's so many different camera flavors these days with different ways that footage has been shot. So what to do when it comes time to choose a project setting? Well, as a general rule of thumb, I would recommend that you choose a setting that reflects the majority of the footage that you're bringing in. If, for example, 70% of your footage is HD footage that has been shot in an interlaced format, then you'll want to choose this setting here, HD 1920 times 1080, where it says 59.94 I for interlaced. And don't worry about the other 30% of your footage that may be a variety of different flavors. Edius will handle that on your timeline, on your HD timeline. It will process any changes that it needs to make to that footage on the fly as you edit. But if you have your project setting matching the majority of the footage that you're working with, then the Edius program doesn't have to churn away so much in the background, using up resources, converting your footage on the fly to match your project. And so that is the best approach. And then when it comes time to export to your final destination, you know, it may be that most of your footage is in NTSC, but your final destination is a PAL DVD or PAL broadcast. Well, at the very end of your project, after you have edited everything in NTSC or this HD 1920 by 1080, it's in the final export that you can transcode your footage to the specific requirements of your destination. Okay, so that's my advice. That's worked the best for me, and I believe it's what the other guys are saying as well. It's find a setting that best matches the majority of your footage and go with that. And most of my footage on the current project that I'm working with has been shot in HD in an interlaced format, so that's the setting that I'll choose. Now, audio preset. By default, Edius seems to be presenting me with this 8-channel audio, and I'm not sure if that is something based on a box that I ticked the first time I ran 6.5. Not sure why. Very few of my projects would require 8-channel audio. Very few cameras actually shoot in 8 channels, and if you leave it set at 8 channels, it can present some problems as you go to edit. And so depending on the camera again that shot the majority of the footage, you'll want to choose a setting that matches that camera, especially if you know that the person who shot with that camera utilized these 4 channels of audio in the recording. Then you'd want to select one of these other options, but basically what you want here is a 2-channel audio for most purposes, most projects. And when we go to set up our own presets here in a few minutes, we'll set that up so that it will be on our own preset each time we start a project from now on. Okay, so after you have got your audio, let's click on the little advanced arrow and make a few observations here. We may not have to change anything, but let's point out a couple of things. Here again is where you could change some more things for your specific needs. The one I think we'll point out, everything I think is fine here for an interlaced project. You want the upper field. Frame rate is perfect. Display aspect ratio is perfect for HD. We definitely want the 1920 by 1080. And we want the alpha channel available. Here people are beginning to ask, well, should I make it an 8-bit project or a 10-bit project? You know, one of the main new features or reasons to upgrade to 6.5 is that it now does this wonderful color correction in a 10-bit color space. And so people are emailing, should I start my project in 10-bit so that I can take advantage of the new color correction features, and some of the filters are also now in 10-bit. Should I just be doing 10-bit projects from now on? Well, at this point, I would recommend just staying with the 8-bit setting here for most of your project. Now, it may be that as you're working on your timeline, working on your project, you will come across a few clips that didn't have a good white balance, and you're struggling to make them look good on your monitor. Well, it may be helpful to, while you're working on your project, to temporarily switch it to a 10-bit project, and we'll show you how you can do that. And then do your color correction in the 10-bit color space, and then change your settings back to 8-bit to finish off your project. Or what you may want to do is complete your project and leave color correction to the very end, switch your project to 10-bit just to do your color correction at the end of your project. But while you're working on the project, while you're doing the main construction of your project, you will probably find it easier to work in an 8-bit setting. It just doesn't require quite as many resources on your computer processor. You will find that you'll be able to play more things in real time, have more layers of video, and be able to play it in real time if you are in an 8-bit color space. So for the most part, I recommend leaving that at 8-bit. And I think everything else is fine here. Let's take a look over here under Setup. Choose your render format. I like to have the HQ Fine for 8-bit projects. If you are working on a 10-bit project, then you'll want to choose the HQX Superfine for your render format for most projects that you're working on. There may be the odd project that you will want to choose one of these other settings, but for the most part you'd want HQ Fine for 8-bit projects, HQX Superfine for 10-bit projects. Now for over scan size, just trust me on this, you want this at 0. We won't take the time to go into the details why, but I'm not sure even why Edius defaults that to 3%. It just causes a lot of problems when you go to apply effects and work with effects to have that over scan size set to 3. So change that to 0 and you'll be much happier in the end. The audio reference level, that's good at -20 dB. And resampling method, I believe it's in 6.5, where you are now given more options here, and people are emailing, what should I choose here? And I believe the general consensus of the Edius power users are to just leave it at area average, fast and sharp, as you are editing your project. Where you would want to actually change this to something like the Lanxos 3, if I'm pronouncing that right, is, let's say for example, after you're finished your HD project, your client says, can you burn me a DVD? I want to have my project on a DVD. Well, DVD is still standard definition, and when you move from high definition to standard definition that a DVD requires, you're going to actually be resizing your footage. And what can happen is when you resize your footage, you can introduce unwanted artifacts as a result of that resizing. So when you're resizing your footage to different settings on export, here's where you want to, just before you export, go back and change your project settings to one of these other options. Here's a good one here. The Lanxos 3 is an excellent option for resizing your HD footage to the standard definition size. Okay, but for now, as you're working on your project, just leave it to the default area average. And all of this is probably fine. Let's take a look at track defaults. I think it's good to have more than one video track as a default. To start your projects, you probably want 2, and in the end you might end up even working with 3 or 4 video tracks for any typical project, but you can start out with 2 at least, and you can always add later. VA tracks, I don't know if anybody out there is still editing in VA tracks. There might be some die-hard people out there, but I find it confusing to try and work with a video track that also has audio on it. And so I would like to set that to 0. And I believe the general consensus of the guys out there that are using Edius a lot is that it's no longer the best to have any type of title tracks, and so you can set that to 0 as well. Audio tracks to start out with, probably 4 is great for that. So with all of those settings selected, we can hit OK and start our project. And you could go right ahead and start working on your project, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I want to show you how you can set up some of your own project presets so that next time that you start a new project, you can be working with the type of settings already defined for the types of projects that you're normally working on. And you can do that up here under Settings, System Settings, and go down to Project Preset. And here we can either select one of the presets that Grass Valley gave us by default and modify these. And here we can give it a new name if we like. I'm perfectly fine with the name that's already there. We can select a new icon that represents our preferred preset. Probably the one that is there is fine, HD 1080. Let's see if there's anything else. Well, we could choose a different color. There's 4 options here for HD 1080. It may be that you want to set up 4 different types of HD presets, and here you're given the option with using an icon with a different color if you like. So select the green just as an example. And video preset, because my camera is HD 1920 by 1080 that I shoot most of my footage on, we'll leave it at that. I usually shoot in an interlace format. If I was shooting progressive, as we scroll down here, we see, here it would be here, HD 1920 by 1080, 29.97p for progressive. But for this preset, we'll leave this for the interlaced settings, and here's where we can change our audio preset to always just by default go to 2 channels instead of 8 channels. And from this advanced list, I think I want to keep all of this the same as what's given by default for my particular preset. We'll make sure that our render format is the way we like it over here for this kind of project. Here's where we can set this to 0 so we don't have to change that every time. We'll leave the resampling method the same, and here's where we can get rid of our VA tracks and our title tracks, and maybe set this to 2 and hit OK. And you'll notice that the icon changed to green, and now the next time I go to start a new project, I'll just be able to click on here and I won't have to check the customized settings because everything will be exactly the way that I want. And if you have other types of cameras that you're shooting with and you want to set up presets that are specific to that type of camera, you can create, I believe, unlimited number of presets here just by hitting the new preset, and just go through, give it a name, select an icon that best represents the type of footage that you're shooting. You know, if you have one of those red cameras, you know, you could choose that. And you know, if you have an HDV camera, you could choose that. Now, something I should probably point out is just because you choose an icon here for, say, HDV, and had your name HDV preset, just selecting the icon doesn't mean that you are automatically choosing settings that are optimal for HDV. If we go to our video preset, you'll see that you still have to go down and choose a video preset for that. You're creating a brand new preset here, and so you need to select each one. You can't just select the HDV icon and be good to go. So you'd need to go down and find the HDV settings that match your camera. Most likely that's HD 1440 by 1080 shooting in the interlaced format. Now, if you understand progressive and you know that the footage has been shot in the progressive mode, and you want to make a preset for progressive, then there is the option down here to choose HD 1440 by 1080 in the progressive format, P for progressive. If you choose that, and you know you have projects where you'll be using footage that is primarily progressive HDV, then you might want to also change your name up here so that it is reflecting that. So we'd say progressive preset. Okay, set up your audio channels to check the advanced, make sure everything is the way it should be, and then over here again, set up the settings to, in this case, an HDV project, you'd want to choose the HQ fine, change this to 0, leave that, and change your preferred video tracks down here, and hit OK. Now we have an HD progressive preset. Well, you get the idea. You can set up as many presets as you like to reflect the types of projects that you typically work on. Okay, now there's one last question that people are emailing me about. Is it okay, they ask, to change your project settings in the middle of a project? Is that going to cause problems? Is it going to affect my project? I don't want to lose work. You know, how bad is it to change projects? How do you do it? Well, there's two places that you can change a project. Up here under settings, you can go to project settings, and at any point in your project, it's perfectly fine to change the settings of your project. It's not going to cause any problems. Edius is set up to just automatically convert the footage that you have thrown on the timeline to the project settings that you choose. And so you're not going to lose anything. However, you should keep in mind that when you do change your settings to reflect something that is quite a bit different than the footage that you're working with, it's just going to make it a little harder for Edius to play things in real time. So for the most part, as you're editing on your project, you want to try and keep your project settings to best match the footage that you're working with. However, as we pointed out earlier, if you want to tackle some problem clip that you just can't get the colors looking good, and you want to take advantage of the new possibilities for color correction using the 10-bit color space, well, it's absolutely no problem to, in the middle of your project or at the end of your project, go under project settings and change your current project settings, go to advanced, hit the 10-bit project setting, hit OK. Now your project is in the 10-bit color space. It may not look like anything has changed, but now as you go to do some color correction, you'll see that you can fine-tune your video clip with a lot more flexibility and probably solve some of the issues that you are struggling with color-wise in an easier way, a better way in the 10-bit color space. And it may be optimal to even export from your 10-bit color space. All right, well, I think that does it for project settings. If there's some question that you have that I haven't covered here in this tutorial, send me an email and we'll try and cover that in an upcoming tutorial. But for now, I think that does it for project settings in Edius 6.5.